Welcome back to another episode of Fieldhouse Report with Cougar Carlson and Drew Callahar. We are very excited today to bring in our new guest, Glenn Osterhout.
Yeah, Glenn, a 1983 graduate of Washington State University, is already doing so much for the university in so many different ways. He's really become the voice of the Cougar Athletic Fund on Twitter, and we're so excited to talk to him today. So, welcome, Glenn. Thanks for being on the show.
So, Glenn, tell us, how did you become a Coug?
Well, interesting story, and I got to tell you this: every Coug that I meet, I usually ask them how they got to Washington State, and every single story is different, and every single story is really entertaining because everybody comes from different backgrounds, different places, so it's really fascinating. For me, now remember, this was 1978. Okay, so the world was a lot different. You didn't have football and basketball games on every week, every game. It didn't happen. I mean, every once in a while, the Cougs would be on TV, and that was usually the Apple Cup. Now, if you made March Madness or you made a bowl game, you'd get on TV. So I grew up in Seattle, and so we just didn't know a lot about the Cougs. And that's why athletics, quite frankly, is so important because of the TV viewership of our athletic programs. So I'm a senior in high school. I'm trying to figure out what to do for college. And a good friend of mine's sister was an AOPI at Washington State. And she told her brother, "You got to get over here and check it out." So 6 of us loaded up in a Ford LTD station wagon, which was kind of the car of the era, right? It'd be your modern day SUV. 6 of us piled into the car and we drove to Pullman. Never been there, no idea where it was, just headed to Pullman. So we got there and she got us set up. We stayed at the Theta Chi house for the weekend. And the guys were great. And we went to basketball games, we walked the campus, we went to a party, we did the whole works. And I just had an absolute blast. And we got in the car Sunday afternoon to drive back to Seattle. And I said, "Okay, who's in?" All 6 of us were sold. That was it. We're going to Washington State. So that's how I ended up there. And best decision of my life.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think when you talk to any Coug, everybody, when you start driving across the state, you get past Washtuckna, you're coming down the hill into Pullman. I think the memories for everybody just start flooding back in their brains. As I was growing up driving over from the west side for football games, one of my favorite parts of those weekends was being with my dad and my grandpa and hearing their favorite memories from their time at WSU as we made that trip. So it does lend the question, what was your favorite memory from your time at Washington State?
Well, it's a great question, and I had a lot. I had a blast over there. First of all, to begin with, so a lot of great times. But probably the highlight for me was 1982 Apple Cup in Pullman, Martin Stadium, packed house. The Huskies were 9-1, and we were 2-7-1, and the point spread was 24 and a half. So everybody figured they were just going to come in and walk over the Cougs. And we played a phenomenal football game. And if they won, they were going to the Rose Bowl. And for us, there wasn't much at stake except bragging rights. Well, long story short, we won the game 24-20, knocked them out of the Rose Bowl. And Pullman went absolutely crazy. Well, obviously, we rushed the field, and that was probably the least exciting of the whole thing. We went up to the hilltop, and Chuck Nelson, if you remember, he was the field goal kicker. And I think he had made something like 34 straight. And he missed. We were up 21-20, and he missed the field goal off to the right. So all of us at the Hilltop restaurant were ordering double cheeseburgers with French fries off to the right with all the Husky fans in there. And they weren't too happy about it. Later that night, my roommate showed up with about 8 buddies. with part of the goalpost in the Coug.
That's a great story.
Well, and then another part of it ended up in the Palouse River, and I don't know when they went to these permanent goalposts, but yeah, that thing didn't last very long.
I'm sure there'll be a situation where we can get those goalposts down again, and I certainly would be a fan. It'd be a great memory just to watch it, get those
it,
students to do it, but
it might take a little more work, is my guess.
I'm sure. Why don't you tell us a little bit about what it means to be a Coug to you?
Well, I think, I gave that a lot of thought when I looked at the questions. And I think for me, what happens is it's obviously a big sense of community. And I think when you go to a small town like Pullman, in a very remote location, and you've got 16, 18, 20,000 people all your age, all trying to figure it out, how to get your classes organized, your living arrangements, your social life, your study habits. I mean, you got to figure a lot of stuff out because you're on your own. You're not living at mom and dad's anymore. And so collectively, you kind of figure it out. And you get a group of friends, and then you start engaging on different things. And that really builds that sense of community. And people who don't go there, they don't get it. They don't understand it. UW is mainly a commuter campus. And a lot of these students live off campus in an apartment, or they're still living with mom and dad. It's a completely different experience. And, we didn't have any money. I mean, 1978, the economy in the state of Washington was basically Boeing and Nordstrom's, right? That was it. And so, it wasn't like I was going to go shopping at a high-end mall every weekend. So it was perfect. And I think you build that sense of community. And then what happens when you graduate, everybody disperses all over the country, literally. But then when you get together, you haven't even skipped a beat. It's talking about going to the Coug and intramural sports and going to athletic events and joining committees and all the things that you do there. And you don't miss a beat. So it develops a real community and a real spirit. And I know people like myself, that was 40 years ago, and lifelong friends that, I'm still in touch with. And I think that's really what happens when you get there.
It's a special place. I certainly felt that sharing a bit on your experience, uh, driving across the state and whatnot with, your group of friends and everything. I kind of, I had a similar experience driving up from LA, which is where I grew up. We missed our flight, my parents and I, to go visit the school. And then we drove 21 hours there to get there. And, it pulled me in as soon as I walked on the campus. And, I never thought that something like a small town and a campus like Washington State could do that, but it grabbed me almost instantly. And I'm forever grateful to be a Coug, and I'm darn proud and glad to have had my experiences. So, yeah, thanks for sharing those.
Well, and that's exactly to the comment I made earlier. Everybody's got a different story,
Yep.
and it's not always easy. It's not like UW where you just get in your car and you drive to campus, go to school. I had a friend come from Los Angeles, and she just decided she was going to Wazoo. That was it. I'm going to Washington State. And her parents were like, "What? What are you doing? It's middle of nowhere." She'd never been there, so she's driving from California, and she's getting closer to Pullman, and they're burning the fields, right? They're burning the crops to burn them down in the fall. So it's all smoke and haze and fire. And she goes, "What have I gotten myself into?" She got there, absolutely loved it. Still a season ticket holder, goes to all the games, the whole works.
Yeah. Yeah. And that love and passion goes way, way back. And to your point, as it's not always easy. I mean, my great grandparents would tell me about how they used to have to ride the train to get to and from school
Yeah.
back in the day. So yeah, uh, that it's a fine tradition that's been going on for many, many years for sure. Now we're all passionate about being Cougs, obviously. Many of us Cougs feel the same way. Glenn, what made you turn that passion into action and want to get involved in things like the Cougar Athletic Fund?
Well, there's multiple reasons, but my observation on all of it is that we all go to Washington State. We all have a great experience. We get a great education, right? We have a great experience. We have a great time, and then we all leave, right? Most people leave. They don't stay in Pullman. Some go to Spokane. A lot of them come over here to Greater Puget Sound, and unfortunately, a lot of them don't return, which I don't completely understand, but they don't get back to campus. And so they become disconnected and disengaged unless they join the Alumni Association, go to the events or whatever it might be. And so what I'm trying to do is communicate a message that you don't have to go to Pullman every weekend for a football game or a basketball game or whatever it might be, to not be a donor. You're still watching the games. I know we are, because the viewership in the state of Washington for our football games is very high. And in the old Pac-12, we were ranked for TV viewership. We were ranked anywhere from 4th to 6th in the Pac-12 on viewership. So people are watching the games. They're going to sports bars. They're having parties at their house. They're traveling to the away games. All right. They're fans. But the disconnect is they're not investing much in the team itself. And if you want to go and if you want to win when you do all these things, we have to invest in the program. And right now, we're not at the level that we need to be. We have 245,000 alumni. And currently, there's 3,300 donors to the Cougar Athletic Fund and 2,300 to the Cougar Collective. And I'm just going to be honest, that's ridiculous. All right? That is far too low for us to be where we need to be competitive. And the other piece of the equation is we have a wealthy alumni base. I sent some stats out on Twitter just the other day. In the new Pac-12, those that graduate from Washington State, their first year earnings are second in the new Pac-12. Our early earnings in the old Pac-12 was fifth and far exceeded those from Colorado, Arizona State, the Oregon schools. Think about it in the big picture. Very few states in the country can compete with the economic base we have in the state of Washington. With Microsoft and Amazon and Starbucks and Costco and Boeing, we have an extremely strong economy with very high-paying jobs. We are, right now, the state of Washington, per capita income in the state of Washington is third in the country, in the entire country. California's first, New York is second, and the state of Washington is third. So my point is, we have a large and we have a wealthy alumni base, and we need to engage them. We got to get them in the game. And growing our base is critical. 3,300 to the Cougar Athletic Fund isn't going to cut it. So that's why we came up with this match campaign. So Gary Scheinmiller, who's a good friend of mine and a great Coug, who incidentally is the guy who funded all these statues that we have at the different campuses. We not only have the one in Pullman now, we have them at all our campuses. And Gary worked with a firm to design all those and fund all those. He's an awesome Coug. So he and I teamed up. We came up with $250,000. And when we hit 1,000 new donors, we will donate $250,000 to the Cougar Athletic Fund. So part of the reason I got involved is, well, there's two reasons. One, I honestly believe that young men and women need to have the opportunity to get a world-class education, and a scholarship does that for them. And a lot of these young students wouldn't be able to do that on their own. I also want them to have the same experience I did, because let's face it, it was awesome, right? I'm getting a degree and I'm having a great time at the same time. The third reason is, quite frankly, our success in our athletic programs is the biggest marketing tool we have. You could spend endless amounts of money on campaigns and advertising and whatever you want to do, but nothing compares to success in athletics. More eyeballs, more engagement, more donations, increased enrollment. Because I've been out there on these fundraising calls. I've been at these events. I've been with Cougs when we're winning. And they will meet with you in a second when our program is doing well. And that's not just athletics. That's College of Business. That's College of Medicine. That's Murrow. They're excited, and it engages people.
Yeah, I think it's wonderful what you're doing, providing opportunities for the next generation of Cougs that are obviously graduating, or people that are, within their careers at the various stages throughout their lives. One of the things that I think you've spoken to is that you're trying to build teams, within different organizations. And I was hoping you can kind of elaborate a little bit more on that.
Yeah, great question. So, I've been wanting to do this for over a decade. And the reality was, when you're working, Jack Thompson and I and a few other Cougs, we developed Cougs First, which is the business network for WSU alumni and friends. And, that's been 12 years now in the making. And it's growing leaps and bounds. And we've made tremendous headway on it. And that's where I was dedicating my volunteer time, along with trying to fundraise with athletics. And I just didn't have time to build the teams. But I'm retired now, and I love the work. So what we're doing is we're reaching out to all the major corporations in Greater Puget Sound. Microsoft, I mentioned them before, Microsoft, Amazon, Nordstrom's, Boeing, Starbucks, T-Mobile, all of the major corporations. And we are identifying key point people at those organizations to help us build teams of Cougs. And to give you an idea, there are thousands and thousands of Cougs at these companies. Between Microsoft and Amazon alone, there's 1,500 Cougs. And these WSU alums are sitting on hundreds of millions of dollars. With the stock appreciation that you've had at those companies, Microsoft has a very generous match campaign. They'll match up to $15,000 a year in giving to charitable organizations, and they will pay employees hourly for their volunteer work that they do for Washington State. Boeing, they match up to $10,000 a year. Nordstrom, $5,000 a year. So your $500 donation is $1,000 right out of the gate. And there are thousands of people. So those listening out there that are at those companies, we are developing teams at each one. And please get engaged with the group at your corporation so we can build this out. And the ultimate goal then is, once these teams are in place and developed, we're going to engage them with WSU. We already have a request from Microsoft, and they want to do a Zoom call with Coach Rogers.
Wow.
So they're testing the waters out there to see how big of audience they can get, right? And if they can get the audience that they want, we're going to set up a Zoom call between Microsoft employees and the coach. And quite frankly, anybody at Washington State, College of Business, College of Medicine, Murrow, recruiting, you name it, we're going to set these up. My goal is that you would do something like this on a quarterly basis at these companies. And these teams will be independent of WSU, but they will utilize myself and Alex Peace, who runs corporate relations for Washington State. They will coordinate with the two of us to bring in the people from WSU to engage. And it won't just be Zoom calls. It'll be private receptions. It'll be speeches at their corporation. I'm telling these teams, look, it's up to you. You be creative and you figure out what's going to work best. And then we will work to get the people there to engage. Because we've got to make that connection, right? Because a lot of people just aren't getting to Pullman. And I get it, if you're married and you got a couple kids and you're working at, 50 hours a week, it's not easy. But that doesn't mean you can't participate in the university. So, again, those out there in those companies or people who know people in those companies, they need to reach out to us and let us know. I'll go so far as to, do you guys mind if I give my email address?
No, that's fine.
Yeah, it's Osterhout, OSTERHOUT GK@gmail.com. And if you're at one of those companies and you're interested in getting involved, email me. If you have contacts at those companies that you think we should be talking to, please make an introduction through that email address. I did a tweet and a post on LinkedIn, with this concept. And I got over 35 emails from people that were interested in getting engaged and getting these teams started. And some of them were the satellite companies that actually do work for these companies, whether it be recruiting or advertising or business consulting. So we have a massive audience over here that we need to engage.
Oh, I agree 100%. I think one of the things, you talk about it with building these teams and obviously building networks, Cougs first, obviously the WSU Alumni Association, and everything. Just like I mentioned before, like I think this next generation really needs to lean into people such as yourselves and others and show up to all of these events to really engage actively because there are other Cougs just like you, that want to help us and that want to help lift us into the next and propel us forward within our lives. And, for that, I know Drew and I are grateful for, people like you and others that we've met that are other Cougs. I mean, every Coug I've met has always either been a mentor or is just rooting for me and wants to support and help me in any way. And so I think when I, meet someone like you, I'm honestly just grateful. And the gratitude just goes a long way. I know I can't always show it, but I just want to be able to express that now. So,
Well,
thank
and
you.
I want to add to that because, we're not just asking people, give us money, right?
Right,
We
right.
want you to get involved. There's a lot of ways to get involved. You can
Hmm.
mentor students, you can mentor alumni, you can join advisory boards for the different departments at WSU. And, the whole concept around Cougs First, it's think Cougs First for products, services, and hiring, right? And so we want you to buy from Cougs, right, to support their business. And
Yep.
what's happening is if we do that, they in turn donate back to WSU. But also the concept is, and I want to encourage WSU students, start reaching out to alumni more than you are because we're out here and we're willing to help. And
Yeah.
I've probably coached up 10 or 15 financial advisors because that's what I did for a living when I moved back up here from California. And I've coached up probably 10 or 15 of them. And the amount of time, energy, and effort that I've been able to save them, right, by being in the business as long as I was, both the experiences that I had that were positive and those that were negative. And I helped them develop a business plan. And it sets them up as long as they're willing to work at it. That's a huge piece to all of this. And those students and alums, quite frankly, reach out to us. It's so easy now. You go on LinkedIn and you put in Washington State University advertising, and hundreds of people will come up. And then you go through and kind of pick and choose and ping them, and say, hey, I'm thinking about a career in advertising. Can we chat? It's as simple as that. So, students need to get more aggressive with that. But I would also say that alums also need to get more aggressive because there's a lot of expertise out there. If you take a look at the Murrow College and the number of broadcasters that we have out there are hundreds at very high level positions, and Cougs need to reach out to them. And alumni also need to be aggressive with it, and alumni need to be aggressive in getting involved with WSU, because a lot of people will say to me, well, I say, well, are you donating to WSU? And I'm not even saying athletics, whatever your college was, alumni association, whatever it might be. Well, no one's ever asked me. And I said, well, no offense, but we've got 245,000 alumni. I'm sorry, but we're not going to be able to make a personal phone call or email to every one of you. So
Right.
pick up the phone, right, and call somebody, or get online and find out how you can get involved.
Right.
It's not difficult, but alums have got to do that. You can't, and we're Cougs. We were talking about it earlier. It's not easy getting there. The weather's sometimes inclement, whatever it might be, but we're workers, man. And you can't tell me that you don't have enough time in a day to get on the phone and figure out how you can get engaged. And we've got to do that. These teams will help. There's no question. There's a lot of people who want to get involved. We just got to get organized and start engaging them.
Yeah, Glenn, one of the things that you and I had talked about previously is just the lack of education that there seems to be around this. Like people understanding what the needs are at Washington State and the specific steps that they can take to help in those areas. Can you talk really quickly just about what the Cougar Athletic Fund does exactly? Like if I'm sitting at home and I'm listening to this podcast and I think, oh, gosh, contributing to the Cougar Athletic Fund seems like a good idea. Where would my money go after I donate?
Great question. Let me start with the big picture first, right? College athletics in the last 3 years, as we all know, has changed dramatically.
Yeah.
If you look at college athletics 4 years ago and sooner, the whole game was facilities, right? It was football complexes, indoor practice facilities, nutrition, weight training. What are you going to do for me if I come to your university to make me the best I can be and potentially have a pro career? That was the whole game. And that's where all the money went. And I'll give Kirk Schultz and Pat Chun a lot of credit. They raised a lot of money for facilities. We funded and built the baseball clubhouse. Same with the indoor practice facility, the Champions Center, and improvements to the volleyball facility. They raised over $50 million for facilities. So they did a very good job on that. What's happened is the whole game has changed. And it's really important for Cougs to understand that the most critical piece of the equation now is annual operating revenue. We've got to have better revenue streams into our athletic department. Facilities, there are always going to be projects and things we need to raise money for, but those are less and less important every day in this new world because athletes are getting paid now, and you've got to have money to do it, and you got to have money to do it. So that's why the Cougar Athletic Fund is so important. We raised our last fiscal year, we raised $8 million in the Cougar Athletic Fund. Our scholarship bill is about $12 million. The CA, and it's going to grow because the NCAA is allowing more scholarships. Football, you can go from 85 to 105. Baseball, now you can have more full scholarships. So that scholarship bill is going to go up, not down. At a minimum, the Cougar Athletic Fund, which all that money goes to funding scholarships for our student athletes. At a minimum, we've got to cover that cost of our scholarship bill. So we've got to grow that by at least $4 or $5 million. And that takes a tremendous amount of pressure off the athletic department because what they have to do now is take resources from other areas coaching salaries, nutrition programs, recruiting. They've got to take money from there to cover that scholarship bill. So we've got to cover that. That's priority one in my mind.
Yeah.
Is the scholarship bill, and that's the Cougar Athletic Fund. And think about it. Who's going to argue with providing money so a young student athlete can get a world-class education and have a great college experience? That's pretty hard to argue with.
Yeah. Well, obviously, you mentioned, the importance of contributing to the Cougar Athletic Fund. You've done so in building out the Cougar Collective. Why contribute so much now, given the regime changes between, a new football head coach, certainly a new incoming, David Riley for men's basketball, and obviously both president and ADs, we've had a lot of turnover. Why is now the right time to, put this match campaign together?
I think the slogan that the athletic department came up with, the next chapter, I think that was brilliant because that's exactly where we are. We are now in the next chapter. We have a new set of opponents in the conference. We know who they are. We're going to add a few, I'm sure. And
Yep.
we have to in football. We'll probably add some in basketball. But we know where we are. We know where we stand. We're going to have a new regime, and it's time to look forward. I'm over it. The Pac-12
Love
meltdown and
it.
everything that happened. Well, guess what, folks? It didn't go our way. Now, it wasn't for a lack of effort. Kirk Schultz and
Right.
Pat Chun worked hard, and I want to emphasize that, worked hard to try and get into another conference. Unfortunately, in my opinion, and this is just my opinion, the networks were in charge. The TV networks were in charge. And
Right.
even though our ratings were pretty good in football, they have a whole equation that they look at when they do these TV contracts. And Oregon State and Washington State didn't make the cut.
Right.
And that's the harsh reality. Was I upset? Oh man, it was brutal. The whole thing was gut wrenching. But you know what? That's life. Things don't always go your way. And we're Cougs and we're tough. And, time to move on. Next chapter. And so let's get out of the gate. We have a really good team in the Cougar Athletic Fund. Brandy Finch is in charge of the CAF now. And I work with her consistently, and she is doing a great job. So we're going to build this thing. And CAF's going to grow. If donors, large donors, I think CAF would be great if you want to make a big commitment there. But, if you want more information on WSU's NIL or other areas you can donate to in athletics, again, call them up, And Adam Ganders is the lead fundraiser. You go to the site, you get his phone number and his email, and you call him. It's not difficult to do. So that's why I did this campaign. I thought the timing was perfect. The new chapter, we're moving forward. We've got to grow our donor base. We've got to cover our scholarship bill. And, with a whole new regime,
Yeah.
And I'm excited. I have a lot of faith in Ann McCoy. Ann's been there 24 years. And this is remarkable. I have never heard a bad word about Ann McCoy. Now, anybody that's worked at an institution for 24 years and you never get a bad word about him, that's impossible.
Right.
That just doesn't happen. Everybody I've talked to said, she's sharp, she's on it, she gets it, she's a Coug. And I'm like, I don't know her very well personally, but I knew Bill Moose and Jim Sturk very well. I have a lot of confidence in her. But it's time to move on,
I agree.
Yeah.
Glenn, if you don't mind, can you jump in real quick, explain what that match campaign is, where we're at today, and how much farther we have to go?
Yeah,
Right.
absolutely. Man, you guys are good. You guys are just teeing it up for me here, This is great. Well, so the goal is obviously we got to grow our base, right? As I mentioned, we have 3,300 donors to the Cougar Athletic Fund, which is ridiculously low. So the campaign is to attract new donors. But what's also happening is current donors are upping their game because they're excited about it. But when we get 1,000 new donors to the Cougar Athletic Fund, Gary Scheinmiller and I will donate $250,000 to the Cougar Athletic Fund. Right now, we're a couple away from 600 new donors, and that's in 5 weeks. So put that in perspective. On a base of 3,300, we've added 600 new donors in 5 weeks. So it's working, and people are getting excited. And I want to knock that 1,000 out, as soon as we can. But these things take a while.
Yeah.
But so if you're a new donor, it's $100 a year to be a member of the Cougar Athletic Fund. You get online, you click a few buttons, and it's done. You can also set it up monthly, quarterly, semi-annual, annual, which quite frankly is even better because we need a recurring revenue stream for scholarships.
Yeah, you heard it here with Glenn Osterhout. He wants you to take his money. We are currently, as I saw this morning, at 587 new donors for the Cougar Athletic Fund. I would love to see 1,000 so that we can take this man's money and put it right into the Cougar Athletic Fund and support WSU athletics. So,
Gary and I are ready and willing. The money's there. We're ready to write the check.
All right, so now it's obvious why you should be donating to the Cougar Athletic Fund. Now, for some people, they might not know, what should I do with my money? I know that there's the Cougar Collective out there. There's the Cougar Athletic Fund. There's also donating to the university. Can you talk a little bit about how the Cougar Athletic Fund and the Cougar Collective are, side by side and joined for the same efforts?
Perfect. I don't know if you guys had a chance to read it, but I did a column in Coug Fan.
we did,
Because
yes.
to your point, Drew, there's a lot of confusion out there, right? You've got the Cougar Athletic Fund, you've got the Cougar Collective, you've got the WSU NIL, you've got the sports specific program. So people are saying, hey, Glenn, coach me up here. What do I do with my money? I'm confused. And in the column, again, remember, annual operating revenue is what we're developing here. So, in my mind, for most of the donors out there, if you're talking big money, again, you need to get a hold of the Cougar Collective, or you need to get a hold of the leads in the Cougar Athletic Fund. But for most of the donors out there, there's 2 buckets. And my recommendation is 50% to the Cougar Athletic Fund. So let's say you got $1,000 to donate, 50% to the Cougar Athletic Fund, and 50% to the Cougar Collective, because we've got to have the funds in NIL to retain and recruit players. And some people don't like it. I get it, but that's the game we're in. And maybe in a year or two, I think things might change a bit. But in the meantime, we've got to grow our NIL, and I don't see NIL going away entirely. It may change form. There might be some more ground rules around it, but I don't think it's going away. So I think those are the 2 areas where people can have the most impact in terms of their giving.
Awesome. Now, outside of their giving, we've talked about it a little bit on this podcast, but attendance at games trailed off a little bit in 2024. What would be your message to fans to get inside, whether it be Martin Stadium, Beasley Coliseum, Bowler Gym, Lower Soccer Field? What's your message to Coug fans about attending sporting events?
Yeah, so I'm actually on a committee that Dave Soleil, who's the chancellor of Pullman now, he put us together. We developed a team. It started with about 15 of us, and then we gathered all kinds of feedback. I literally got on the Coug Fan message boards, and I said, game day experience, need your feedback. Well, we have 245,000 alumni with about 2 million opinions, right? So so yeah, I just got flooded. I mean, all and you know what? Quite frankly, most of them were very good. And so I think I had 70 responses. And I read all of them and I kind of went through and then I obviously prioritized what came up. And then the rest of our team kind of did the same thing with their groups. And, you know, we drilled it down to 6 of us and we drilled down our message and we spent an hour on a Zoom call with Dave. Um, and he was there to gather ideas on how to improve what we're doing. And one of the key things that I wanted to emphasize was let's make it a football weekend. Let's just not make it a game, right? Um, we've got to give people more things to do. When they roll in town on Friday afternoon, we've got to have functions. We need wine tastings downtown and Oktoberfest downtown, and the different departments need to have advisory boards coming to town Thursday, Friday, and going to the game Saturday. Uh, we need to have more activity and more engagement so that you're not just going there for a 3-hour football game. And obviously the pregame too, the Fieldhouse, Cougville, RV lots, you know, we've got to make it better and more entertaining. Some of the other things that are probably going to happen is we're going to develop a website, you know, the football weekend experience. And on that website will be all the activities, right? What's going on in downtown Pullman, what's going on in Alumni Association, you know, volleyball matches, soccer matches, you know, everything, you know, where there's still available RV parking in Pullman and around Pullman. And I don't
Right.
think people know that. So links to where people can find that RV parking. It's less expensive. And one first down on the farm, they run a shuttle from
Yes, they
from
do.
the RV lot. Yeah. So, you know, let's get creative here. And, you know, if people are close enough, they'll either drive or they'll figure out a way to get to the game. But
Yeah.
the whole goal is to enhance the entire experience, right? So that
Yeah.
there's more things for people to do to get the various departments behind it. College of Business, Murrow, Alumni Association. Let's have events that bring people into town and get them excited. You know, what I told them was, hey, look, think minor league baseball, right? In minor league baseball, I've been to probably a half a dozen games in my life. I don't think I've seen more than 2 or 3 plays. You know, I'm there to have fun, you know,
Yeah.
to talk to people, to have a beer, to socialize. Um, and let's face it, that's a big part of going to Coug games, you know.
Yeah.
It's a blast. So
Yeah.
we're working on it. And Dave is listening and the university is listening. Now, there's some things that, quite frankly, probably just aren't going to happen for budgetary reasons. You know, the
Sure.
Jumbotron and the sound system, I can't believe the price. To repair it, you know, and do you do that when you actually need to replace it, you know, but it's extremely expensive and they're trying, but I don't see a lot of money there, for that right now. Um,
Sure.
you know, so I'm just being honest. We're not going to get everything we're asking for, but we're having the dialogue and, you know, everybody wants to improve it.
Yeah.
Start with improving attendance is improving that game day experience. I know that you can get on Die Hard Cougs or you can get on any of these Coug fan chat boards or whatever, and the list of excuses for why people can't make it to a game just goes on and on and on and on and on. And there's totally validity to a lot of those things. It's hard to get to. It's hard to get across the pass. The weather can be bad. Yada yada yada. But at the end of the day, when we've had good teams or we've had great opponents come to town, I think of Colorado coming in on a Friday night, not this last year, but the year before. we had a pretty awesome crowd for that game, and the reason why was a lot of people wanted to see Coach Prime. So my point in saying all of that is that people will find a way to Pullman if they deem coming is worth it, and fixing that game day experience is a big piece of
I think
Well,
that'll be essential. Yeah.
yeah, I think you guys are right, but we also got to be realistic. You know, I've worked with the university in earnest now for 20 years. We're going to get some of the things we want, but we're not going to get all of them.
Yeah.
And some of it, quite frankly, is not WSU's fault. Everybody wants beer in the stadium. Um, and, you know, that's an ongoing battle with an entity in the state of Washington. Washington State's pushing for it, you know, they want to do it. Um, but, you know, you run into roadblocks and, you know, it's not WSU's fault. You know, they're pushing.
Yeah, I will say this. If they do that, I know that money will be a factor in Coors Light or whatever one of these brands is gonna be, but somehow we have to get the old Crimson Lager in there just the same because I think that that'll be essential to more Cougs being excited, obviously about being able to still get something but distribute money back to the Cougar Collective. And if we can do that, I want that to happen. At the end of the day, you kind of got to want things when it's hard. That's something learned from Mike Leach as I recently reposted, I forget, on Twitter or X. Um, but you got to want things when it's hard. And I know that our schedule and everything and getting there and costs kind of all add up. But when we've had successful teams with Mike Leach or other head coaches, people have always found a way to get there.
Well,
And
you're exactly right. You know, when you're winning and you got a big opponent, um, you know, people will, you're exactly right. They'll figure out a way to get there. You know, they'll do whatever it takes. We're also talking about, and if people listening to this show want to give feedback, I gave my address out earlier. We're taking a look at, and for those Cougs in Spokane, having an event on Friday night at Northern Quest. Let's have a happy hour from, you know, whatever people want to do from 4:30 to 7, right? And getting all the Cougs in Spokane and those that travel to Spokane and then go down to the game the next day. Let's have a happy hour social function that night at Northern Quest, and then you go to dinner, you go gamble, you know, you do whatever you want to do. It's less expensive, and then you travel to the game the next day, and everyone's a winner in that. So that is part of the proposal. If you know people in Spokane, mention that to them, and see if they want to get behind it. You know, because again, the marketplace is going to dictate whether these things are successful or not. And if Spokane Cougs think it's a good idea, then there's a much better chance. But what's going to happen is, and I told the Spokane group, look, you know, it's not just for you guys in Spokane, it's for those people that are traveling there to stay and they want something to do. You get in at 2 or 3 in the afternoon, you check in, you relax a little bit, and then you go to a Coug happy hour. Well, geez, does it get any better than that? You know, I mean, so there's a lot on the table that, you know, that we're proposing that are not expensive. You know, the budget's tight, so there's some things that, you know, it's going to cost too much money. And again, that gets back to why you need to donate to the CAF and why you need to donate to Cougar Collective NIL,
we will
because
put both of those links at the bottom of these videos to make sure that everybody knows exactly where to go because we want to make sure we take your money.
well,
Uh,
and I should mention, and I didn't, you know, on the Cougar Collective campaign, we have a match campaign there as well. And it's a 2-for-1 match on every dollar you donate to the Cougar Collective, up to 300 grand. The match dollars put up are 150,000. So we're trying to get 150,000 from Cougs to get us 300,000 for NIL for men's basketball.
so, Glenn, you mentioned that there's over 240,000 alumni. How many are there dispersed across the state of Washington and beyond, if you're able to share that?
Absolutely. And I just got an update, and I now have to get used to the fact that there's 245,000 WSU alumni dispersed around the world. In the state of Washington, there's 156,000. And the breakdown there is 65,000. And this is just your majority. Obviously, there's more alumni in smaller places, but Greater Puget Sound has about 65,000. Vancouver has about 16,000. Tri-Cities has about 14 or 15,000. And Spokane and Northern Idaho have about 18,000.
Wow.
That's the disbursement of our alumni base. And here's another thing I want to add. 245,000 alumni. Gonzaga has 42,000. Our alumni base is 6x Gonzaga. And we have way more Cougs working in Greater Puget Sound, making tremendous amounts of money in compensation and stock. And we should be absolutely crushing them in terms of dollars into the program. And that's including supporting football at a high level. With that size of alumni base engaged, we should be crushing them.
Yeah, that was one of the things that we had talked about the other night, right? Was we were talking about how us Cougs, we love to have the underdog mentality and doing more with less. Well, how about we start doing more with more when we all get involved and we have that donor base potential there. We just gotta crack into it.
That's a really good point. We've got to get away from the underdog mentality, because the reality of it is we have a very large, wealthy, and successful and passionate alumni base. And especially in the new conference, there is no economy in the new conference that is better than the state of Washington.
Right.
Idaho, Oregon, Utah, Colorado, none of those states even come close to what's happening in the state of Washington. It's not even a contest. So why would we be an underdog? There's absolutely no reason whatsoever. We have the resources. We have the alumni. There's no reason. And this whole do more with less, I don't want to hear it anymore. Let's do more with more.
You heard it from the man himself. This is a rallying cry to all Cougs out there. Put your money where your mouth is. Invest in the Cougar Athletic Fund, the Cougar Collective, WSU Alumni Association, and whatever alumni association you belong to. All the colleges and departments, whatever you can offer the institution. Put your money where your mouth is and invest in Washington State University as a whole.
Darren, I can't agree with you more. And we've talked about athletics, but athletics isn't for everybody, and I understand that. And so if that's the case, join the Alumni Association. Donate to the College of Business or Vet Med or Murrow, wherever you have a passion, right? In last fiscal year, we raised $160 million, which was the most money ever raised at Washington State in a fiscal year. And a lot of people get on Kirk Schultz for various things. They did a very good job raising money under Kirk Schultz. But I will tell you this, the research and the data tell us that we should be raising between 200 and 220 million a year to Washington State. That is where we should be. And quite frankly, I think that number is a little bit low when you add up all the Cougs working at these corporations in Greater Puget Sound.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Glenn, for taking the time to share with us about how Cougar fans can get off the sidelines, get in the game, and support the university that gave so much to us. So with that being said, I will be sure to share all the links that you need to do just that, to get in the game. And again, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with us today.
Absolutely, and go Cougs.
Go
Go
Cougs.
Cougs.